The hip-hop writer is a creator, composing understanding words of cultured brilliance, powering a rebalance of the elements equally. Pages of rejuvenated reaffirmation, simply the almighty leadership of insightful craft work that stands to build through any confrontation born to be. Yet his daily duty is as a journalist that questions properly and uses his ears to filter the real. And as the art decays by dilution, he concentrates the best again and again, exposing it in the print. Today's journalist and tomorrow's historian, he listens to share. Here is that necessary attempt executed again and again and again. This is the Power Right Show at S.STREET Media. This is your brother, the lone low life with the home sewn garment, the Boricua with the build, the true and living God, stepping in score, Sunyas Allah, a.k.a. Skillustrator Low. And we're on S.STREET Media, the evolution of media, where every intrigue will have its own show, every incredible thought will have its own episode, and every timeless insight will be archived. And as I always say, this show is about my element of hip-hop, what I like to call the writer of art on art and science on music. You know what I mean? The only show in history on this hip-hop writer element that I, a veteran of over a quarter century, helped to pioneer. You know what I mean? Straight from the father, Bones Malone. You know, peace to Bones Malone. You know what I mean? Still giving the solutions out there. You know what I mean? And always want to salute the intro. That song called I Call My Brother's Son. That's from my brother Kevlar7 produced that. Remembered in Perfection, my brother Kevlar7. Extreme catalyst to my career these last 12 years, simply put. So, now, some stuff out the way. I got my new books out. The Filtered Real Essays from the Invisible Renaissance is out on paperback and ebook. You can contact me at Sunyas97 at gmail.com to get your own autographed copy, or DM me at Sunyas, Sunez, on the social media, the Instagram Sunyas7, on the Twitter. You know what I mean? If you don't, right? So and I get you a copy of that though. How much it costs though? Exorbitant amounts of money, as I said. I've been saying this since I was off air, right? So everything you can have, everything that's required, and everything you can spare. And what you're going to get, though, is really the documentation of this entire era that no one's doing. No one's doing, though, because they can't, because they won't, and because they fuck it up anyway. And the new book I have now is an ebook. It's a quick ebook because it's just light work. And it's an ebook. Let me tell you about this ebook. It's I love detailing it because of the what I've done with it. I hate best of list. No one gives a shit what he thinks. No one gives a shit what your top 20 is, Right. And when you look at those lists, you just go, that's the shit. He didn't put the shit I like in there. Or look, he put that one first, and that one should have went there. And everybody's mad that the same records aren't in the exact order that you like them in. That's not useful. That's not useful in any kind of way. So what I did was, it's a 70-page analysis of the best musicians and artists of hip-hop music that I heard in 2020. So it's missing some motherfuckers, though. It's missing some motherfuckers. People ask me, why didn't you write about him? Because he's weak. He's on some bullshit. His rhymes are corny. You know what I mean? Or they get enough press. If they get enough press, I don't need to say the same thing. But it's usually because I don't like them. And I think they're weak. But what I really did try to do was bracket them in a revolutionary new system of ciphers that categorize this entire universe, and these are overlapping categories. They're not pigeonholing anybody into a category. They're trying to show you the depth of all that's there. You know what I mean? And that book is real simple, man. $5 ebook. You know what I mean? Contact me. I get it to you, and you're enjoying and reading by the end of the night. You know what I mean? But some other add-ons, though, and I thought this was funny, though, so I have to say it, though. First off, definitely go check my partner show, Classic Storm Radio, with my brother DJ Toshi at the helm. A real staple of New York City underground. You can't really document hip-hop in the 2010s, especially New York City hip-hop, if you don't document what DJ Toshi has done via the podcast and via the Rock the House events. You know what I mean? crucial to people finding the music. And I've had the glory of hosting the show for the last, 4, 5 years, you know what I mean? And the last two shows, 288, 289, we did, was able to have definitive builds with Steel and Tech, Smith & Wesson. You know what I mean? Questions that they never answered because nobody fucking asked, you know what I mean? And we got them, you know what I mean? I asked them questions that nobody asked them, you know what I mean? And a lot of people wonder how I never interviewed these people, though. That's because when I was in the 90s at all these magazines, though, they didn't let me do it. It's that simple.
Right.
It ain't no secret, you know what I mean? Usually a lot of it was because I'm the spick, so I can only interview Latinos, you know what I mean? And once I run out of Beat Nuts and Fat Joe, I got nothing left to handle. That literally was it. You know what I mean? So I can't do the Gods, I can't do Goody Mob or anything like that because apparently I don't know as much, though. You know what I mean? But that's about a whole fuck up in the industry, the media industry. You know what I mean? And a lot of this documentation is about repairing that and letting you know who are the MCs, who are the artists that really define this era. You know what I mean? And if somebody was to say, there are some people that, there's a lot of great artists, there's a lot of great MCs, people that we would put at the top. But there's very few MCs that I would say, like, they carry, if I had to say, like, what's New York all about, though? And I just wouldn't pick out the records. I would pick out the individual as well. It'd be my guest today, you know what I mean? He embodies everything about New York, though. He's steeped in so many elements, though, I don't even know, you know what I mean? I'm going to read some things that I've written over the years of him. From then till now. 2012, reviewing Shazil York's Dead Stock Revival LP, I was talking about the guest on it, and I said Starker's exaggerated monotone, dynamically relaying character and technique with surprise inflections and chaotic fluctuations make him the dominant feature. You know what I mean? Just approaching his early 20s, Starker's on the level of any of the best MCs his age today and continues to shine on his appearances. Right? And when I wrote that, I was lowballing. Now today, I wrote in my Reel of 2020 book that I just said is out now, some of the stuff I said much more. I said, an absolute favorite of this writer. To see young Boricua brother with a lifestyle of immense flair, grit, and undeniable talents work with the best MCs to emerge out of the invisible Renaissance beginnings in the early 2010s, Shaz, Starvin, etc., and become one of this era's greatest. And as a God, it's great to hear so much depth continue to be blended into the rhyme as Starker gains that knowledge itself every record. Is there any other way for an MC to become invincible? By the massively intense breath control he delivers in a dynamic monotone, the more progressive, off-kilter, or just plain weird the sampling music that surrounds him, the songs he creates embody that live New York City essence. A B-Boy 3000 on the mic. That was some of what I said to my guest today. My guest today is Starker. Peace, almighty.
Peace. Right? I appreciate it.
Indeed. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
And a lot of times, when writers, mainly because they're not that good,
Right.
I'm throwing darts. You know what I mean? I throw darts, but also because they haven't heard everything. Most of the people that write about the music, they haven't really heard everything. Right. You know what I mean? When I say I've heard everything, it's coming out of thousands of records. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when I'm saying all this, like that New York City vibe, I want to go into the origins of Starker. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So let people know, because I'm going to build up, and just by letting you tell your story, it'll show and prove what I mean by that New York City essence. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because no one's really sat down and said, look, all these great records you're putting out over the years, not just like the last 2 years.
Right.
And people aren't looking, people aren't asking, and I find it obscene. I'm very offended.
Hey,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. I do too, but I just gotta just show and prove.
Right.
Keep my head down, work. You know what I mean?
So the Starker, the superhero origins. Where you from? I said you was Boricua, but
yeah.
Where are you from, and your origins. Where you grew up, what boroughs you grew up.
Absolutely, yeah. I grew up in the borough of Brooklyn, so I'm from Williamsburg, but not really the Williamsburg that's what you would think when you say Williamsburg. You know what I'm saying? It's the Williamsburg, like, my block's off the hook. Like, my block never changed. It's still like whatever you want. You know what I'm saying? It's like the R&B song, like. They got it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
For real, like, so. You know, that's from conception. Like that's what I seen before I could speak. So from that comes you know, just growing up in the 2000s of the era where like you know, Channel 42 on the box was prominent. You know what I mean? So like I was watching a lot of 106 in Park when I 6:30. I was watching a lot of Top 25 Countdown in the weekends by whoever it may be. You know what I mean? Big Tigger on Thursday, he'd do the throwbacks. But like everything that was going on around that time, I was soaking up just as a listener and as a student. And like since a kid, I've always been very acute to music that didn't necessarily have to be popular to be what I wanted to listen to. So like when I remember my first conscious thought of grabbing something that was not really like the radio hit was Take It or Squeeze It by the Beatnuts, which had no escaping this. So I was a little kid and I went to Kmart with my moms and I seen that and like I got the edited version and all that. I was young, so like she didn't even let me get it with the curses and shit. But I still made it a point to get that album because every time I seen that song and they had a commercial for it, it would pop up every 30 seconds. It just drive me crazy, and I was like, this is not like what I'm being shown on a daily basis with like, you know, Cisco was hot back then type of shit. You know what I mean? Right. So like I had to go out of my way to be like, oh no, but what's this? So that was the origin of me being a avid like digging through, you know, and combing through whatever I could find, whether it be on BET or through CDs and leaving around the house, and I would have to find what I liked. And then that pretty much evolved after that to going to Florida and popping up on my cousins and them showing me LimeWire. After LimeWire, I would look up, you know, that was it. You know what I mean? LimeWire, Bear Shit, all of that.
Right.
I type anything that I would type, but Mobb Deep, Wu-Tang, it wouldn't even be necessarily Mobb Deep or Wu-Tang that'll pop up. I found other artists behind that. MF Doom, you know, Sons of Man, Killer Army, all types of shit. Just by typing the keywords of Wu-Tang or whatever it may be, Tribe Called Quest, and like I started making my own mixtapes in that vacation to Florida, and then when I came back to New York, I just had like an immense amount of music that nobody else was able to have as a person my age. Like that was around the time that 50 Cent was dropping like Before the Massacre mixtapes and shit like that, and I was going to school like running around with these CDs of just esoteric music that people, these kids were just like, what is this? You know what I'm saying? Like it was a lot of kids didn't jack it, but in general, like that's how I was taking it, and like I kept that shit till an adult. It was a point where like I wasn't updating my iPod. You know what I mean? It was never getting updated. It was staying from maybe the mid 2000s all the way back, like maybe 06 back, and I was content with that. Whatever was being shown to me on the radio and the TV, I was just ducking and dodging because I understood that it really had no cultural context. You know what I mean? It was just bullshit.
When do you start? You know, I said that, you know, you engage in all the elements. You do graffiti. Right. You do, you know, you're obviously an MC. What element did you start getting into first and said, you know, I can express myself in this way?
Right. Graffiti. Graffiti was the first thing, and immediately. As a little kid, I was always drawing. So I would draw, you know, cars, basketball players, dogs, those types of shit. And then I got to the point that I went to a summer camp, and one of the summer camp counselors, he wrote SIN. He's from Queens, so he's dope. I don't get to see him that much anymore, but everybody tells me he's running around still. His name is Sin. He's nice, and he used to be my camp counselor, and he showed me a lot of just like amazing. Just it wasn't even graffiti. It would just be like he knew how to bend. Just he could bend. It wouldn't even be, you could say, letters. It would just be the fabric of a letter, which would just be, you could say, a line, and he could just bend it and warp it into just this beautiful, like graffiti that you would see, like maybe like people would say like a Linkin Park cover, but it was something that I'd never seen anybody necessarily do. I would see it on like the back of Source Mag or something like that. Like Tats Crew would do something like that, but he was showing me it in summer camp, and then after that, I took it upon myself to like do whatever I can to try to, you know, have an identity on paper. You know what I mean? And then like that built into a monster where I was just like really writing my name on shit. You know what I mean? And then that really became a problem that I still can't shake. You know what I mean? Like it is what it is.
You know, UMC now, and I just want to juxtapose this back to graffiti and stuff, but like, because you said you still, you know, do graffiti and all that, like, when people ask, and it's always a question, but people don't really ask the people that do it. You
Right.
know? And they just ponder it, or we rationalize it and shit.
Yeah.
Right? What do you get out of actually writing on walls? What do you get out of that? Because somebody could say, okay, well, he could draw that stuff, but why can't he just draw it in a book? Why can't he just... What is the freedom that you get out of putting it anywhere that you feel like putting it?
I mean, at the end of the day, there's a city full of walls that you could post complaints at. So, like, I mean, that's, you know what I'm saying? It was the most depth. So I'm not necessarily complaining, but I'm just leaving my identity where I was on some Kilroy was here, maybe you could say. But at the end of the day, I have a passion for just like, I can't, you in somebody's eyes, it's destroying, but it's, to me, it's a creation. Like, it's something that was before that, there was nothing. And then I came and left my mark, and that might inspire another child like me to go and do the same thing. You know what I mean?
Right. Because you're seeing it as like, it was empty. Nothing was there.
Before my tag, there was nothing. So before I created that, you know what I mean? So that is that's my identity there when I'm not. You know what I mean? And somebody could see that, and maybe they could identify with that, and then start to create their own identity. And I feel like the most important part of growing up was doing graffiti, because like if you wasn't doing graffiti at a certain age, like, you know, your identity was as big as when the people called your name. You know what I mean? It was it. Somebody called your name. Oh, that's it. That's as far as it went. You wasn't really going out there trying to make a name for yourself, doing nothing to you know, let people know that you had a need to get this, to, you know what I'm saying? It was an itch that it had to be scratched. It wasn't a perpetrating of, oh, I just do it in a book. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
You really going out there because like it's a sport. You know what I'm saying? And if either you on the bench or not, you know what I'm saying? So a lot of people play the bench talking about, I hit a book, you know what I'm saying? That's nice, but people know. If you've seen a tag, you've seen a fill, you've seen it, it is what it is. I know, since I was a child, I knew how to get home through graffiti before I knew a street, because the shit didn't move. You know what I mean?
Like, those are the street signs.
Right.
Those
It didn't move. I knew how to follow. Like, all right, well, I know this tag is here, this fill is here, this tag. I don't really necessarily know what block it is, but I know this nigga got a rock. He was there. So that's it. And I would follow my way home through graffiti. Like,
that's crazy.
Right.
And so you're doing graffiti at a young age, right? When do you start dabbling and saying, starting to write rhymes or try to rhyme and say, I would like to express myself that way?
Yeah, no doubt. I went to high school in you could say Queens, Brooklyn, or borderline. I went to Grover Cleveland. So Grover Cleveland, they had like, I guess, I don't know if they still have it anymore, because you always hear about the schools taking programs away, but they had poetry. And for whatever reason, I got assigned to a poetry class, and this teacher I had named Miss Levine, she like made it a point to me that like I have something to say. Like, she told me that. You know what I mean? Like, I was just shitting around. Like, I would be going, you know what I mean? Just regular. She happened to be the class that you had to be every day at, which was third period, in order to get your attendance. So I was always at her class. She knew no matter what, she was going to see me. So when I would go to that class, she would make it a point to me to do more than just get attendance and go home. Like, she was really like, yo, you got something to say, you should do it, you should do it, you should do it, you should, you know what I'm saying? Just push yourself to express yourself. And then, I did it. And I did it. A poem turned into... it was poetry was to me like, it wasn't really poetry because I wasn't necessarily following a rule of like a stanza or anything like that, but it was just me really like free form of what the beginnings of my raps would be when the rap found like you would refine it and make it something to present, you know what I mean? So this was like the conception of what was gonna become me understanding that I could actually rap, you know what I mean? So poetry class turned into me going to, after poetry, I would go home. You know what I'm saying? Because it was third period, and then I would find somebody to go home with. We go smoke. You know what I mean? And then we would be in the crib, and like I had music to play, and I would rap over it and play around. And my boys would be, oh, you're really good. You know what I'm saying? Like, you really should take it serious. And I was like, maybe I should. You know what I mean? And then like one thing led to another, where I just understood how to like use my phone to record, and then like I was just making it a point to make friends with other people that knew how to record. It wasn't necessarily like if they wouldn't be doing the music that I was doing, but I was learning how to advance in the field by making it a point to get familiar with that aspect of it. Like, okay, now you write rhymes, but now you got to learn how to actually create a song that you could walk away from, and you don't got to keep reciting every time the beat comes on. So I was like, all right. So I would go to people's houses that were local in the neighborhood that also did music and work on music too. You know what I mean? And I just got familiar with the swing of making music, not just popping up and spitting a rap. You know what I mean? So,
does this intersect, like just knowing these places because of the graffiti as well? Like now, you're more familiar with the ciphers you're around.
Right. So with the graffiti that wasn't necessarily moving, created a place in my mind where I was comfortable when I seen these fills or these tags, because this was a sign of home. You know what I mean? Whoever was leaving their mark over there was either they were from my neighborhood or they was over, but whatever the case may be, they made it a point to be where I'm at when they wasn't around. And that started my identity. So that was my conception of wanting to do graffiti so another kid could do what I did. But with graffiti and the music aspect, the practice of writing in itself and bending letters is, to me, like the fabric of creating a sentence. You know? Because everybody, you could write a word, right? All right, I'm literate. I could write a word. That's great. You could spell. But now you got to do it with style. Now you got to be masterful in your expression. So I could write my tag, but I could write my whole rhyme. My rhymes look like that, like hand styles. And that to me is like, I don't write on paper. I write in my phone. But in the beginning, I was writing on paper, and that was like, to me, just looking at that was like a vision of what you thought was hip hop before somebody tried to tell you what it was. You know what I mean? Like you looked at that and it was just like, I did this. You know what I mean? Like I there wasn't anything that I could deny. That was an obvious statement that I understood what I was doing before I necessarily was like trying to do it. You know what I mean? So just the fact that I had an understanding of how to do graffiti, how to bend letters, words, that is beginning to learn how to bend expression and sentences and just that display of, like, you know, how to just show that you have a culture within you that needs to be expressed. Because some people, maybe they have it, maybe they don't, but people choose to be timid about it. And I feel like it's my responsibility to let people know what I have inside of me. And that is what I believe is a purest form of hip hop. You know what I mean? At least the hip hop that I was being familiarized with,
right? Which
was basically the '90s. You know what I mean? Like I respect the '80s hip rap scene, but like it didn't really, I couldn't identify with it because it just seemed to me something that was it was just too. It wasn't that it was too. It was like when you watch like old school basketball players play, and you know they're nice, but then you then like these other street ball players start playing, and then it's like, oh, it's about to get crazy, and then you want to start. It's like, what do you want to do? You want to play like, you know, Bill Russell, or you want to play like Hot Sauce? And you know what I mean? So it's like you want to do the Hot Sauce shit. So I was the '90s to me is that. But I got a lot of respect for the beginnings of it. You know what I mean? Because without that, I couldn't do this.
Indeed. No, I definitely see that. Yeah, it's a really interesting insight there. You know what I mean? When do you start getting to a point where you see that you're good enough to say this needs to be collected, you know, in some kind of thing, and I need to go seek, you know, other artists of greater rapport?
Right. I was familiar with an underground scene that was going on that people didn't know about in New York, which was the Outdoorsmen, and that was in the early 2000s, like you know, 2009, 2010. Action Bronson, A.G. the Coroner, Mayhem Loren, Shaz, and that was like something that J Love. Shout out to J Love for real. So that's my dude.
Indeed.
Yeah, shout out to J Love. So that was something that was brought to my attention where I felt like, all right, you could make music that sounds like the past in the present. And with that, I was able to actually meet Shaz, who was a member of the Outdoorsmen, while I was on my, you know, I was actually running around catching tags and going thrifting and things like that. I think I was even like, I was just up to no good at that time. And then like he was actually doing the same thing. You know what I mean? He was thrifting, just up to no good. And I was like, oh shit, you know what I mean? So it's not a coincidence. Like,
Right,
you know what I mean? Like it's real. You know what I mean? He's catching tags, and I was up there doing the same thing. So like, I bumped into him, and it just was like an affirmation that like, shit is closer than you think. You know what I mean? You go on YouTube and you see it, and you're like, oh, this is dope, and I identify with this. But then like you go outside and you see the person for yourself, and then they identify with you in a way. Because they see you and they're like, oh, I used to do the same shit when I was this person's age or whatever. You know what I mean? So that created a...
Right, and Shaz being a graph writer, also MC.
Yeah. He was it. Like, when I met him, he was doing what it was supposed to be done. Like, yeah, you could rap, but you can't... He was doing everything but breakdancing. You know what I'm saying? So that was important to see as somebody that was stepping in the Terror Dome. Because you didn't want to play yourself unless you had... somebody that was necessarily like doing it. I can't say it's not a matter of that he was doing it before me, but he was doing it in a tasteful way at the time where at that summer he had the game and I witnessed it. You know what I'm saying? So I was around when he had it. So that was like that was a sign of the times where it was like,
yeah, if I could interject something of my own thought. In the late 2000s, late 2000s, early 2010s especially, I felt that Shazil York was leading that way, especially around the low lives, all of that culture, and showing a complete hip-hop, I only use character, but in the most realistic sense, you know what I mean? And I say that because I remember trying to pitch him to certain major magazines, and they felt other people that were in that clique that didn't have any work were bigger stars than him. I'm just gonna leave it right there. So I'm gonna throw darts. We're talking about Starker here, but he was the one when Outdoorsman was blowing up. He was the one that countless people were asking me, "You gotta hear him in here.
Yep.
You gotta check out what he's doing." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then eventually we started to hear Starker. You know?
Yeah. So.
One of the things that I always was interested though in the beginning, right? In the early 2010s, it's really two movements that a lot of people know. It's really two movements that intersect with other select MCs that make me call it the Invisible Renaissance, like the whole era.
Right.
I started calling it in 2012 that. Because I'm coming from the 2000s. And by 2010, I had already called the 2000s the Dark Ages. And just like you saying, the 90s were that era.
Right.
I was there when so much greatness wasn't going to know. They didn't let me write about it. They didn't let me do it. And, you know, just for the listeners, and I always say this again, no, it's a wonderful beef to keep reliving.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many magazines, I'm talking about the big ones, not the little ones, you know, that in the early 2000s, 2000, 2002, 3, and 4, and 5,
right,
where I pitched MF Doom to major magazines. Let me do a piece on him. Just give me 400 words. Give me a little box. And no go. Yeah. Even after he was on Adult Swim. This is why, like, just one of the many reasons why I call it the Dark Ages. All of a sudden, I'm seeing all these artists at Goblin Studios.
Right.
Incredible albums being made.
Right.
On the outskirts, I'm seeing other people like, you know, Napoleon the Legend, like just upstarts coming in. Then I'm seeing Rock Marciano, what he's doing, and Ka coming out of nowhere.
Yep.
So I'm like, wait, something, and then it's also sparking like, you know, different production, like the way Ka's producing rock.
Yep.
Alchemist is not really producing like he used to. He's based on crates now.
Yes.
The strength of the crate is becoming the thing. It doesn't matter the drum. It matters the strength of the quality of the crate, which I thought was a big deal because a lot of the classical-minded MCs, right, that are trying to keep it live, are rhyming over the same breakbeats. Yeah. And that's the only boring part that people are getting mad about. Like, in other words, not them. I'm just using them as an example because they're the most famous retro.
Right.
But it's do what Ninth Wonder did again and again, and that became what you're supposed to do. And that was one retro, but that's not, you know, after like what 10 years, it was failing. Yeah. But what I want to ask you, like Goblin Studios, for those who don't know, Goblin Studios was in Queens. it wasn't just one borough going in there. It was Queens, it was Medina, it was all the boroughs going in there. It wasn't just young upstarts like Starker or guys hitting a prime like Spit Gems and others. It was Cormega recording there. It was Large Professor, right. Tragedy Gaddafi. The Mike Tyson album was done there. That enough said right there. That's history alone. That's one of the most important albums of the last 12 years.
Right.
And what I always wanted to ask you was like, and this is something I found when I was listening to records. I was like, one thing I actually didn't like, that I always felt like you were seen, not by any individual, that they would say this though, but that you were seen as like an upstart rookie. And I was like, he's like, it's like watching Zion Williamson. It's like, why is Ingram shooting? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I was like, Stark is supposed to have an album right now. Like, he's supposed to be going out there. And I'm like, and I'm not saying this for beef. I'm saying this for the level.
It's not like that.
I'm trying to get to the listener the level of skill that you at and how precocious it was, because you were on songs with Starvin' B.
Right.
These are guys, I literally called it the invisible renaissance. These guys are at the peak, and then when you rhyme, there's no difference in skill level. You know what I mean?
Appreciate it.
And I always want to ask you, the first thing as far as the skill level, right, is I don't hear anything like developing. It's already done already once we first hear you. And I'm like, how does he have that breath control there? And it reminds me of the Punish, and I don't mean it like for pun. I mean it like it's a Boricua cadence. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's almost like, I try to explain to people, it's almost, he's rhyming like the way our people on the island talk Spanish.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It rolls.
Yes.
It doesn't just double time, it rolls.
Exactly.
Yeah. Talk about that, like rhyming.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't even speak Spanish, but it's just it's that real. You know what I mean? Like that's like as good as it gets for me, because like I done heard it my whole life, and just the beginnings of me before I could speak, I would hear just the background of people speaking, and my beginnings of life was just in Spanish, and it's not a focal thought that I purposely did that or I did, but even you saying it right now is like, yeah, absolutely, because if I think about it, like just the way my mom expresses herself when she talks to her mother, or the way my father has to when he has to speak to somebody like that, and just, you know what I'm saying, like, or when they're talking about me and they don't want me to know about it, like I already know, like, you know what I mean. It's just the way it's, if you could hear. Everybody heard somebody speak Spanish before, but if you could hear the way a Puerto Rican speaks Spanish, especially a Puerto Rican from New York, it's crazy, because it's like you really got to be there and catch it all at one shot, because if you don't got a fast ear, you listening slow. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And there's always differences, right? Dominicans talk super Spanish. I've lived in the Heights for like 10, 12 years.
Right.
You know what I mean? But Puerto Ricans have a melodic cadence. And it's a little less, it's not choppy like a Mexican's cadence. It's very smooth.
Yeah.
And it's very, very high-pitched sing-songy. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you got to think, like, it's really, the epitome Hector Lavoe, like the way he sang and the way he talked. But it comes across in the music so easy that it allows you to do a lot of techniques. It allows you to go anywhere in the song. I kind of see, like, the techniques like Kyrie handles, though.
Right.
If you got those handles like that, you could do anything you want in a song, and there's no real problem. Like, you don't have a problem on the songs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What was your mentality in the beginning of those days? Were you just trying to soak it up, or were you trying to make albums and you just didn't know how to get it all together? What was?
The first step was learning how to record a track, and I learned how to do that before I went to Goblins. Once I was going to Goblins, I was learning how to. It became a competition. So the competition of everybody being around you that had so much talent was a matter of like, all right, now what is your next step? How do you prove that you have said talent as well? You got to have a body of work that other people could refer to when they speak about you. So I wasn't necessarily in a position to make an album for myself, because there were other people that were like there were other people that put themselves at priority before me, which is understandable, because you got people over there that practically everybody over there did some time. You know what I'm saying? So people felt like they've missed out on time, so they have a lot of shit to catch up with. And at that event, I'm nobody to feel like, I don't have any entitled like placement where I was like, oh, I'm first, second, or third. Like, you do what you got to do, and if anybody has room to put me on a feature, I was taking that for what it was. But I had to start understanding that, all right, this is a sport. So in every sport, you got to. It's not a matter of that there's no iron team, but this is a sport where you got to look out for yourself when it comes to like finding a producer that believes in you, finding a studio that's gonna let you record before somebody else, and things like that. You know what I'm saying? So I had to start finding where I was finding places where I was seen as received as important, where people were like, all right, he's priority. I want to work with him. I'm gonna give him a beat. That's, you know what I'm saying? Because other people would just make it harder than what it was for me. So then when I was finding people that were more willing to work, I was sticking to them. And then I created I wouldn't say I created a community around myself, but I found a small team of people, like 2-3 people, a producer or two, that I was able to work with. And that was when I took it upon myself to remove myself from the Goblin scene after I seen what I had to see, and actually picked up all the good and the bad from what was going on over there, because it was wild over there. It was crazy. All types of shit was going on. But for what I was able to see from my favorite artists popping up and just shooting the shit on a casual scene, you know what I'm saying? It was like Rap City for real. You had the pool table, all types of shit. The rappers really killing for the fucking Grand Poobah popped up. Fucking, there's not one person I could think of that wasn't there at one point. You know what I'm saying?
Large Pro, Sadat X. Really, everything that you heard, somebody. If it was New York, they popped in.
Oh yeah, it was there. Yeah. Everybody pulled up and, you know, checked in. So whatever the case may be, like you said, Cormega was there. Like I got to the point that I just stopped being shocked. You know what I'm saying? Like one time, they told me that Royce the 5'9" was there, Master Killer was there, this and that. I'm like, oh, it's not. But Sean P was over there. That was my favorite rapper, that was when I knew that, all right, this shit is closer than you think, because you make things distant and you create a mystery behind something that's not really mystical. It's there and it's for you to tap into, and you not necessarily applying yourself in a way that it's you could see it you know what I'm saying, in a sense that it's a tangible thing. You make it. So I made rap something that it was like, oh, I'm doing it for fun, but then I started being around the people that made me want to do it in the first place, like Sean Price, you know what I mean? And then when that happened, I was like, nah, some shit is just not a coincidence, you know what I mean? Like I had to take responsibility for the experiences that I was having. Like these things are not mistakes, you know what I'm saying? So I'm responsible after this to take this experience, and what happens after this is, you know what I mean, up to me.
And you know what's interesting is that at that time, just for the listener, like we're in 2021, but making music in the early 2010s is independent, but not as fast.
Right.
Like you can't do it as fast.
Right.
Like, you can't pump it out as quickly as you can now. So, you know, take that into note as like as you're doing analysis of this. Right. But the first you latch on though is obviously Golden Child, who was one of the producers that was really making incredible work there.
Exactly. He is the archetype of who I was talking about right there, with somebody who was willing to work with me.
And then you did that Dutch masterpiece though, and that really shows all the skills there. You know what I mean? And it's hard to say because there's so many records. A lot of records you won't get because you didn't catch up. There's so much. Yeah. But Dutch Masterpiece is actually a crate because people don't know about it.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Yep. Even Starker fans don't know about it.
Every day I get a text about, what's this cover I seen somebody posting.
Right. Like, and they're like, man. Yeah. I get that a lot too, because people will ask me about records and they're like, oh man, you know, and I'm like, yeah. You know what I mean? They're like, yeah,
waiting for you.
You missed that out. You missed out on that one though. You know what I mean? And I felt like, again, this is what I'm saying. Like, there's no real, a lot of MCs, you can see the life A&Ring of themselves. You know what I mean? Like, you could see them a little bit sloppy, a little bit off and everything like that. These are very refined songs.
Right.
You know what I mean? And for those that don't know Golden Child really had very, very natural skill.
Yeah, still does.
You know, like he didn't really need to do too much to make a beat. And he had great crates, you know what I mean? So it was very effortless for him. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But then all of a sudden there's kind of a break.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's a break in the Starker catalog. You know what I mean? And I'm like, and for some I'm going like, I'm thinking as over the years and I'm cataloging everything, I'm like, you know, what happened to Starker? You know what I mean? Because he made some great stuff and nobody rhymes like that. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden you start coming back with YL. you start making those low Caesar joints and everything like that. So tell me, because I know that now YL is crucial to you making records as well. You know what I mean? So tell me about like really getting back into it and really diving in now.
Yeah. You know, I learned some good habits and goblins. I learned some bad habits. So those things took its course.
Right.
And with that becomes the less practicing of making music and more practicing of trying to make some money for yourself and try to be a self-sufficient person. You know what I mean? So
right.
I was doing what I had to do, and like people say. So, you know, not in a major way. Just in the point that I was outside experimenting in certain ways, and like it wasn't as musical anymore. So, I bumped into Y in a party. Just, you know, in a little basement party in Queens, and like I think he needed some bud, you know what I mean? And then like we just, you know, we chopped it up, and then from then on, like we just had mutual friends that were like recognize each of us as artists, and they were just like, you know, you guys should really work together. And at the moment, like me and him were resistant of each other because we both just kind of looked alike, as opposed to all of our friends. Like we just, it was big enough for two niggas that look like us, you know what I'm saying? Like at least that's how we felt.
right.
And then like, you know, we got over that hump.
Two yellow seed niggas, man.
Right, yeah, you know what I'm saying? Because just like, yo, this is like, people wasn't, in at least in our cypher, it wasn't a lot of people that look like us, you know what I'm saying? So whatever the case may be. We had a common ground with a dude named Eric, who's part of Triple R. His name is Mid. So Mid was on my USA album on the first song, What's Up, and like he was the person that got me in the studio with Y, where Y was like, all right, we should all get on a track together. And then that turned into like me just hitting up Y, like, yo, we should just keep working, you know what I mean? And he was like, word, no doubt. And then one song led to another on SoundCloud, and then it turned into like the religious aspect of going over there and practicing making music. And then we had so much music at one point, we thought we were gonna make Low Caesar 1 and 2. We thought like that, and then we just started cutting fat, and then we actually dropped the first Low Caesar. And at the time, I had already had relationships with people that were working for like Two Dope Boys, because my album USA was already like premiered on Two Dope Boys, which was at the time a prominent website.
Right. Definitely forum. One of the big music blogs. Yeah.
Right, like Not Right, Two Dope Boys. That's what you wanted. You know what I mean? So I was able to use the person that I had at my advantage at that point to basically help me roll out the album in a better way. So I don't really know if the album made Two Dope Boys, but the videos were. So when the videos were making Two Dope Boys, it created a buzz for me and YL as a group, because we were making music solo. You heard Starker on his own, YL was making music on his own, but when we came together and formed something, it created something that people were basically had a better response to, where it was like, you know, you guys balance each other out. So for whatever I don't do, it sound like YL does. You know what I mean? And then you got a song that's basically covering all grounds sonically, what you want to hear before this shit's over. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And you mentioned the Triple R record, the Made in Japan.
Right.
That's a real crate too.
Right.
A lot of people don't know about that record.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. We made that in Japan.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Made it in the Airbnb.
And you know that's you know, and I just want to throw this out there quickly because I mentioned the fashion thing, but a lot of people, some people know, because I you know, it's funny because I was talking about this on the Twitter, because Planet Asia was saluting me as one of his favorite journalists, right? Peace to God. And what was funny is that he was saying that he doesn't, you know, a lot of people, I'm hardcore, but I don't get too bohemian with it. You know what I mean? And I was joking because I was thinking about it. I was like, you know what? I'm not too bohemian because I am the bohemian. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people don't have the life that I live. Like I don't have any street crime resume. And yet all the places that everybody goes to get knowledge, to get this hip hop, to get this, to get kung fu, it's all street. Right. I got it all in the street. Right. A lot of shit that people don't get in the street. I was drinking Baji back in the 90s. Right. You know what I mean? Because that's how we recuperated from kung fu.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like we didn't drink it like, you know, and then brothers was like getting fucked up with it, but we were supposed to drink little caps of it. But you know, then you OD with it, you know what I mean? And we was dressing like, you know, not the Shaolin monks, but we was dressing like the layman monks, you know, where they have the long hair and shit like that.
Oh yeah,
you know, like,
of
so
course,
we grew out of hair and shit like that. I wore gis every day, Chinese gis every day.
I know about that.
You know what I mean? We was on Mott Street buying everything that they had. You know what I mean?
I know about that.
walking around Harlem with weapons and shit.
I don't know about that. Not that part, not the karate part.
We was walking around Harlem with like butterfly knives, the spears and shit.
Yeah,
like,
that's crazy.
We was wilding out.
Yeah.
But so it was real bohemian shit, right? The thing about it was that in the 2010s, I was like, yo, like, how are we supposed to dress? A lot of, a lot of corrupt styles, what I call a lot of trans real styles started coming, right? And it was really the low lives and people affiliated with the low lives that started to show a way for men to dress.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And I put you in at the tops with that because if you don't know what Starker was wearing and shit like that, every video was something just well put together. You know what I mean? Just sharp. You know what I mean? And me, I'm young low life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm a low life because of my hip hop resume, not because of boosting and nothing like that. You know what I mean? You don't become a low life from boosting cassettes though. That's all I did. You know what I mean? Was the music.
Right.
And it was the low lives that gave like a new idea about the fashion. And I'm saying, like, when you study Starker's catalog, those covers, those pictures, they mean something. You know, like they mean something. The coordination of the outfits, they're telling of a deeper story as well. And I'm just throwing that out there as we continue.
Thank you.
But then I think now is when we reach a peak. I remember, and I guess I'll intro this though, talking to Al Divino.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Somebody had a beef with him. It was very ill-advised. I thought the beef was mentioning things that he didn't even say, misquoting lyrics. So I got involved in it because I'm a journalist though.
Right.
You know what I mean? You could get into beef, but if you say he said something he didn't say. So anyway, I was building with Al Divino and we started to talk about his work with you. You know what I mean?
Right.
And this leads up to what I think is one of the great albums in the last year, Secrets. You know what I mean? And I got to highlight that before we talk about, this year's records that you've released. But real quick, I just want to salute Secrets. The artwork, that was artwork from you, right?
Right. Me and Divino.
Right?
Collab.
Put that together, the Secrets artwork. And it's got some jewels if you read it. Do the knowledge to what it says. You know what I mean? A lot of people forget what the actual cover says because they don't understand what the cover is saying.
Right.
It's like you spelled it out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And working with Al Divino, who's one of the most progressive, off the wall, it gives you those challenges. It's like a video game to rhyme through the things that he gives you.
Right.
And that's why I like it though, because it's a challenge that I wanted to see you have. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And you let Al Divino tell he had the greatest time working on this with you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we had a blast.
Right.
Fucking a great time. But yeah, that's
How long did that record take you?
No time. Maybe 2 visits to Massachusetts. Like it was really quick. Like we had 3 songs, maybe 3-4 songs in the cut. One of the trips that I went, that he was like, yo, we got to work on this album, you know what I mean? I made the intention to go over there and work at that album, so I went there for a weekend. We did a couple songs. I went there for like a week. We did 3-4 songs. Then he was like, yo, you got to come back. We got to do more. We got to work on more. I was like, all right, bet. So I went over there, and we just knocked it out. It went from 4 songs to just like 12. You know what I mean? Like it just happened like nothing. And then it was a conscious effort to do something that I wasn't necessarily doing prior to. So like you said, the video game beats, where it was like Al Divino make me rap on it's like rapping on like level 100. You know what I mean? Like real shit. Like it's like that level that you're just like, oh man, shit don't stop. You know what I mean? Like, and you gotta really be like sharp, and it's almost like it's freeform. They showed me the freeform aspect of rapping, where it was like it's very jazzy. It's very jazzy because if you listen to it, it has no rules.
I'm really glad that you said that, because in my Filtered Real book, I said that a lot of these records, especially like the way they make them, right?
Yeah.
SD and Divino,
right?
It feels like the old soul jazz sessions.
Yeah.
It's not really an album. It's a collection of sessions, like a couple of dates.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And hearing you make records like that is very exciting. You know what I mean?
Appreciate it.
It has that non sequiturs, the stream of conscious, and still has a theme to it.
Yep.
Because you have your own themes.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But it's a real peak, you know. And if you missed out on that record, though, it's just you have to have it. You know what I mean? It's an essential record, I think.
Right.
I think it's a real essential record. And you did a lot of great work. You did the work with Hidden Character, another stellar record. You know what I mean? And then this year you have two works. You know what I mean? The Starks Terex, right?
Yep.
And the King Jehoshaphat's. You know what I
Yep.
mean? So let's talk about the Stark Terex, right?
Right.
Came out at the very, very top of the year. You know what I mean? So sometimes people miss records that come out like January 2nd. They're still drunk. They're still fucked up. They're still,
Right.
for me, myself, I'm still processing all of the other shit.
Yep.
You know, trying to process 2020. So I was like, oh, shit. I got
Yeah.
now I'm behind
I believe.
in 2021 already, though.
Mm-hmm.
But this has a medley of producers. A lot of them you just call like the producer's name. You know,
Yep.
the joint that you
Yeah, that's the way it was saved. That's the way it was saved on my computer.
Right. It sounds like that's the way they would be saved. Yeah. But there's a cohesiveness though. How did you put this together? How were you selecting this? Did you know, because I always make this known because a lot of times I talk to people and they say, oh, I got like 500 beats from this guy and I had to choose like 3. And I'm like, this couldn't have happened with Starker, because then he'd be there for an eternity going through beats where he had like almost 10 different producers. You know what I mean? But what made you want to put it like that? You know, put it together like that? What was the science behind putting it together?
I have some songs that were from that album that I have for a hot one. So there was that song Page I have for a hot one. That was a song that E1 sent the beat to YL, and YL didn't want it, so he kind of was just like, yo, you want to jump on this? And I did. And then I was sitting on that. And then that would be the oldest song. And then everything after that was kind of like, it'd be a collection really, where I'm just going to either YL's house or somebody else's spot and working on music. And then like I eventually build an amount of music for myself to deal with, where it's like, all right, what song fits each other, you know what I mean, or at least resembles each other, where I could put them in one umbrella that will make sense. So like it just be a gumbo really. Like I just have a lot of shit that I got to deal with, and then like I just pick and choose what I want. So it wasn't necessarily a specific direction when I was making Stark Terex, but I'll tell you what, when quarantine started, I wasn't able to go to YL's house no more and make music, because we had to be precautious and whatever they was asking, you know, just following order with that, you know. So that was something where I had to take it upon myself to now get my own equipment, get my own, speakers and my own monitor, and just I'm not familiar with the own equipment that I have, but I had to get as familiar as I could in order to start recording music myself. You know what I mean? Like, and then that was what basically you hear on Stark's Terex, which was everything that beside the song Peja, it was a lot of shit that I was just making in my house, like out of desperation to express this work. Like,
is it because of that new setup that they end up being short, or you felt like these were how they should sound? Well,
yeah, I could only do but so much as a person that's recording on GarageBand.
right.
You know what I mean? It doesn't have a lot of I don't have a lot of, I don't even know what that's called. I don't have a lot of room to make like I don't even know, layers. You know what I mean? The layers that I have a limited amount because I'm not paying for this or whatever, and I don't feel the need to pay for something that I truly don't know how to use yet. Like I'm doing as best as I could and keeping it simple without trying to overstep, you know, what I truly understand about this software or program. You know what I mean? Because I'm really trying to make a conscious effort to learn from the beginning. And the GarageBand is a program that was put on the computer for you to just basically have fun, and it went from having fun to I could send these stems to, you know, so and so, and he could clean them up and put it through his software, and then I got a real song. You know what I mean? So the songs were short in that sense because I couldn't take it upon myself to do hooks and this what I wanted to do, but I did what I could, and with what I could became that, and then I try to meet that 30 minutes, 25 minutes on the vinyl. You know what I mean? And
right. And definitely, it definitely, you know, bore out. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because there's so many dynamic things that you say. You know what I mean? Let me go over some of this stuff here. You know what I mean? Because people go, oh look, he just throwing whatever and shit like that. You know what I mean? Clever lines though, like the Clues joint. I walk my dogs. I couldn't tell you why she took a piss. You know what I mean? Just cleverness. You know what I mean? The cleverness. There's also something that you do, and we talk, you know, I always talk about ad-libs with you, right? Because the Pages song, it's a special type of ad-lib you're doing there because they're conversation ad-libs.
Right.
They're not necessarily hype ad-libs. You know what I mean? So it's almost like you have like an alter ego talking to you right there.
Exactly.
And it doesn't cut the song. It doesn't fuck up the song. It doesn't cut into the song. You know, where usually those would cut into the song and just botch it up. You know what I mean? And I'm trying to remember if it was this album or the next album though. But other things he does though. The third joint, right? Theravada joint, right? There's a thing, I described it as like a type of energy where the flow is in like these chopped bursts. You also do that. This is extremely hard because most MCs can't stay in the pocket when they do burst raps. Like when they burst burst little words like going to the, I'm going to into the, you know, like they usually end up out of pocket by the end and you're never out of pocket. You know what I mean? These are techniques, you know what I mean? I don't know, Starker, you tell me if you know how to do this, know how to practice this, if you even are practicing this though, but this isn't normal. You know what I mean?
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. It takes that just is a testament of, you know, the type of person that you are in this culture, because you really are listening. It's not a matter of you hear me. You know, you can hear me, everybody can hear me, but you listening. You know what I mean? It's evident, and even the questions you're asking me. You know what I mean? So it's like I'm always practicing to be a better MC or a better individual in every aspect, but music being something that I practice every day is something that I take to be very critical. So like meeting Al Divino, meeting ST that's when you really gotta buckle up and like you gotta like really like take it somewhere that nobody took it before, because they already are taking it somewhere that people aren't taking it. So it's like if I wanna play with the big dogs, I gotta have something to offer. So I started to evolve my own raps into a place where it's like, all right, maybe I was rapping back then and it was cool and I didn't have anybody around me that wanted me to rap better. People were very content with the music that I was making. They thought that it couldn't get better than that maybe. But Al Divino was like, yo, you could do better than this.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting, yeah.
Yeah. And when he told me that, it's maybe to somebody that's not ready to hear that, it sounds like, like a hater, but I understood what he meant, because I used to be, I was amazed by the shit that he was doing. So when I was Stanley Kubrick and all that, I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, it was just the theatrics of it. Like, it was just like, that shit made me want to do bad shit. Like, I would hear that shit and it was like,
and that's the difference between like special producers, because they're actually having a relationship with the MC, challenging them somehow. Right. And I find that incredible. You know, and something you've always done that I just want to note that goes along the Benji joint, that's always had those deadpan flows. And the thing is, I never know when it's going to happen, because you do it on up-tempo and slow-tempo.
The Benji joint, yeah.
You know, so like, you'll do that deadpan flow, and it's not always on the ones that I think it's going to go in. You know, and that makes it fun to listen to. Yeah. You know what I mean? It makes a lot of fun to listen to. And then also the heavy metal track is a real keeper.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Real note, because you're going loud. And I think that segues into the King Jehoshaphat's album that is out now. You know, you just released that this week, really. Yeah. Last week.
Basically.
You know, and so I've only had a couple of days enjoying it, but I thought the first song that really captures me is the Gingerbread song. You know what I mean? Because the ad lib, I've never been charged up on a song by ad libs. You know what I'm saying? By ad libs though. You know what I mean? So a lot of people don't know when I'm working on studying the artist for an interview, I'm working out with this shit, I'm bench pressing with this shit, and it's the ad libs. I'm like, yo, he's furious on these ad libs.
Right.
And they work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You don't hear ad libs that angry, that yelled. And they're equalized perfectly so they don't drown out the main vocal. It's just real perfect work here. You know what I mean? Real excellent work here. You know what I mean? I would say that the most standard song that really shows the details of that street hustler reality that you're engulfed in is the Stainless joint.
Yeah, that is the general consensus on the album. Like, this is for everybody. Like, you don't got to be like a hip hop fanatic. You might enjoy it no matter who you are.
Right.
You know?
It's the easy, for what Starker is now, it's the easiest one for them to understand.
Right. That's exactly what it is. It's literally that. It's like, yo, for the barber that doesn't necessarily stop listening to the radio, you play this and he'd be like, oh shit, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not really trying to like be too complex there. It's just to show people that, yes, I could still rap for the general consensus, but I like to rap for the real listener. You know what I mean? Like,
you know what's interesting. That's why I gotta take it to the there's something I don't think I can say I've heard. The Ferrari Vado. That's something real special because if you're really listening, that's what I meant by the rolling flow. That's a rolling flow that is literally like it's deliberately stumbling. Like you're deliberately tripping to try to fall out the pocket. And when you don't, it gives the song another groove. It's very much like a funk record. Like your vocals are like a funk, like the way the funk groove is. Yeah. It'll go out, but then it'll repeat itself. You think it's going to go out and repeat itself because for those that don't know, the funk groove is something that is repeated, but it's something jazz purists hate because it keeps getting repeated. The jazz purist wants those drums to change to something else and do something else. Whereas the funk seems like it's going to do that, and then it gives it to you again. So that's where the addiction is, in the funk. You're doing that with the vocals. Right. And I think it's, that's one of the dopest things I've ever heard.
Appreciate it.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I some of this is education. You know what I mean? Yeah. You need a little education on Starker. You know what I mean? Because if you're listening to the record, then you won't know. Like, people go, these records are short and they're not worth the money that people are asking for and stuff. But there's stuff in that 1 minute that you'd never heard before.
Right.
So I don't understand, like, what would be the problem here? You know what I mean? Yeah. But I always ask this to everybody. You know what I mean? The knowledge of self is something that's important to you. There's a lot of griminess, though. Like, you'll say a lot of things that are like, let's keep it real, fucked up.
Yeah.
A lot of street crime, a lot of street hustling, just grimy, punch a bitch in their face lyrics and shit, right?
Yeah, without really ever doing that in history.
Right. What is the reality that you want that you want people to be left with when they hear your albums?
Man, I bleed on tracks. You know what I'm saying? Like, for real. Like, when you hear me like that, like, I have a lot of repressed anger, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's just me knowing myself, you know what I mean? So I'm learning how to take that and use it to my advantage. So what I want people to understand really when they listen to my music is you could have a good time, you might really love this, but at the end of the day, like, I'm nothing to play with, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just gonna tell you that real tastefully, like, as nice as I can, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, but it's always been like that. Like, it's like I'm not playing, you know what I'm saying? Like, maybe I was playing in the past with the rap shit and it was cool, it was making shit rhyme and shit, but like I'm playing for keeps right now, you know what I'm saying? Like, whatever I do is permanent, it's written in ink. I'm doing this for today, tomorrow, and the years to come. You know what I'm saying? So when I do things that haven't been done before, things that necessarily are a little more calculated than that, it's because I'm trying to bring forth something that hasn't been done before. So in order to do that, I have to be original. You know what I mean? So that just takes a little more presence of mind than just making music. You know what I mean? So.
I definitely see that. And I summed it up with that question because at the beginning of the show, I wanted it to be complete. At the end of the show, if you don't realize, Starker is a top-tier artist, MC, graffiti writer, hip-hop artist, because the fashion counts too, though.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And, you know what I mean? Then you're missing out on a big, big chunk of this culture. You know what I mean? The stuff that you're sharing with us, Starker, is culture. This is extending the culture. It's becoming part of the culture. It's inspiring me. You know what I mean? And, it's just joy to build with you. You know what I mean? And to cover your career all these years and see it really come into fruition, with other great, artists, though. You know what I mean? So, with that said, go to Ghost Nace Killer, right? It's like Ghostface Killer, but with the N instead.
Right.
On the IG, follow him on the IG, contact him there. Go to starkerusa.bandcamp, get those albums there. The King Jehoshaphat's is on directly. You can get it directly from him if you DM him, and it is worth having. And it's going to be released on vinyl. Where is it?
Frank's vinyl will be released tomorrow.
Right, Frank's vinyl.
12 o'clock.
Tomorrow. So
Eastern Standard.
By the time you're hearing this during the day, you know what I mean? March 30th, you know what I mean? So It'll be great though. You could play something really whack on April 1st, and you go April Fools, and take that shit off, and put Starker right in there.
That's a good one. I appreciate that. Yeah, absolutely, man.
So it works out though, just in time for the fucking holiday. You know what I mean? But Starker, it's a joy having you here. It's a real honor. Not just as someone that you know is the true and living God, seeing the other gods build, seeing this culture expand though, seeing Boricuas really build and go get their own though, but really seeing, you know, being able to catalog an innovator in the middle of innovations, you know what I mean?
Right.
And that's a special blessing that I've had in these years as a journalist, these 25 plus years.
Right.
So thank you to our guest Starker. Peace almighty. Until next time, there'll be a lot more stories to tell, writings to recite, and records to rewind and reminisce. I'm your host, Sunez Allah, a.k.a. S.STREET Low. And as always, the Power Right Show is a never respect fake broadcast. Peace.